Hello, friends. It is I, Sarah Seidelmann. I'm here with the fabulous Inger Kenobi, and we're here to talk to you, the fabulous humans who think they would like to write a book one day. And we are running a program starting in January to support writers, but we thought we would just jump on and kind of talk about what it was like to write our first books, what it's like now to work on books, and also a little bit about how the program that we're doing is a little different from what you might think. So maybe I'll just start off by saying, so in 2010, I was on a sabbatical and I got this from my job in medicine as a practicing physician and had a craving to write a book. I'd never written a book. And this is the book I did end up writing that in that year, What the Walrus Knows, which is no longer in print. For a very good reason. But I remember thinking, I don't know how to write a book. I mean, I loved books. I was a reader. I was obsessed with books. But I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And I hadn't been writing my whole life. So if you feel like you're supposed to be like Liz Gilbert and been writing in your journal since you were 10 years old, and it was like your lifelong passion and you knew you were a writer, like that wasn't me at all. I was just like 42 and suddenly like, hey, it'd be really kind of cool to write a book. I really struggled with how to do that until I connected with somebody who had more experience than me. Somebody who trusted that books were no big deal to write. You just had to get organized and figure out what the book was, how you wanted to communicate with people. And, was it a nonfiction? Was it a fiction? And begin, writing the little segments. So eventually all the little pieces fit together and you had a book. And so that's why, I feel like that was something, if I had never made that connection with somebody who had that kind of confidence and that kind of experience, I probably would have never gotten there. I mean, hopefully I would have never given up and I would have kept searching. But that's one of the benefits of writing with a bunch of writers, and also writing with Inger and I, who have both written together combined. We've written like 8 books together. And are in process of writing more. And so we have this experience. We're a few steps ahead of you on the path if you haven't written a book. So the other thing that was really, and then I'm going to let you, Inger, talk about your struggles. But one of mine was like, how am I going to come up with the content? I knew I wanted to have a chapters, and then I wanted to do something, because this is a book about how to get messages from wild animals, to help yourself when you're lost, which of course I was so lost, and the animals were helping me so much. So I thought, well, I want to explain to them how to do this work. But I was like, I don't even know how to begin to explain that. And as I was talking with someone, I had mentioned that I had taught a class on it. And she's like, well, do you have the recording from that class? And I'm like, well, yeah, I do. And she's like, well, why don't you have that typed up, transcribed, and that can be the basis for the chapter. And I was like, wow, never thought of that. So if you've ever, taught some topic or been interviewed or something like that, that can be something to start you. It won't give you you can't take that and turn it into a chapter unedited, but it'll give you a lot of great stuff to work from. Then the other thing was, I wanted to communicate, something about the messages of wild animals. And I was like, how do I do this? I was really confused. And then again, when I sat down and talked with another person, we kind of, she helped me to walk through finding a structure. And this is something we'll be talking about in the course. Mine was a very simple structure, because any more than that would have overwhelmed me. So we sort of came up with this, we'll do 10 lines for each beastie. Of course, it lands on honey badger, which is my favorite animal, because they're so courageous. And that's, I think, what writing a book takes, is a lot of courageousness. Let me see I'm going to read one of these. Embrace desire, surrender, commit, throw everything you've got at what you love.
Oh,
so honey badgerish. So we came up with a structure. And once I had the structure, then I was able to go, okay, I'm going to write 3 beasties this weekend, and I'm going to sit and focus on these things. So, and your structure for your book, you guys, will be totally unique. I've done other structures, here's a daily inspiration book structure, where it's just a message from my spirit animal to help you, then a reflection from me, and then a prayer. You'll be able to find in this group, you'll be able to find the structure that works for you to write your book, so it's the most powerful. So those are just a few of the things, besides confidence and fear of what other people would think of me, blah, blah, blah. when I was writing my first book. But Inger, how about you?
Oh my God. Well, I started out writing a book, knowing nothing about what it takes to write a book or anything. I mean, I started out like read a book and I was like, I could have written that. And then I sent off like an idea to the publishing house saying, hey, I have an idea for a book similar to this one that you already published, but with this slant on it. And they're like, great, can you write a synopsis? And then I Googled, what is a synopsis? And then I wrote a synopsis and they're like, can you give me a chapter overview? I'm like, what is a chapter overview? Like, I really didn't know. It was like so step by step. But then, you know, I worked with this publishing company for like years to develop this book. And then a celebrity beat me to it, had the exact same idea. And they're like, well, we're going to go with her. But that gave me the confidence, like, well, maybe I'm not as bad as I think I was, you know, or like, so I kind of like scratched that book. And then I was like, now what? And a friend of mine was like, well, why don't you write about your shop stop experience? And at the time I was living in London, working at the Norwegian embassy, and a friend had challenged me to stop shopping for clothes for a whole year. No secondhand, no thrift stores, no sales, no nothing, as kind of like a protest to the fast fashion industry and rediscovering who we were as consumers and that whole thing. And I'm like, oh, maybe I could write about that. That's kind of fun. And I used to write a diary. So it's like I had like a diary form, you know, and like maybe the book could follow me through these 12 months of not shopping. But my problem was, though, is that I, again, lacked structure. So yes, each chapter could be 1 month of the non-shopping, but I found myself repeating myself a lot, like talking about pollution in every chapter and talking about sale in every chapter and I'm like, oh my God, how do people do this? I'm like, I'm boring myself half to death here. And, you know, like how to like structure it, but I didn't know that there was such a thing as a structure. And because I also didn't know that there were people out there who knew that, I just thought people intuitively were gifted in this way. I didn't know this was something you could actually learn. So that was one of my challenges. I didn't know that, oh, you can go to school, you could take a course, you could join a program. You know, I just didn't know. So I read a lot. And then I came across Margaret Atwood's book on debt. And it's really interesting. And she's looking at the history of debt, but through the lens of history, the lens of blah, blah, blah. So each chapter in the debt book had a different lens and focus on that topic. And I'm like, that's how I do it. I make one chapter highlight one subject, and then I can spin the stories that fit under that heading, kind of like you were talking about, like, so chapter 1 could be consumerism, chapter 2 could be like fast fashion, chapter 3 could be blah, 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 chapter 4 could be, and so all the stories that fit under that structure would fit in that chapter. And then the book kind of wrote itself, but it took me like a lot of unnecessary like digging and finding out for myself, because I just didn't know that this is something you could learn. You know, so it took me a long time. I ripped my book apart 3 times before I had a structure that really worked in a way I wanted it to work. And I probably could have saved myself a lot of trouble had I found you a person who helped you with your structure.
Who we bring on some special guests in this course to help us with these things. And yeah, like it's a great piece of advice to like look through your favorite authors. How did they, like some of your favorite books, how are they structured? That's another really great way to figure out how you might want to do your books. Like, do you like, I kind of I loved Sark's books, how simple, like when I was stressed and exhausted and sad, like I would open a Sark book and I'd be like, oh, this is so easy to read. It's like so few pages, so few words on the page, but so buoyant and lovely and creative. And the fact that it was all hand drawn, like really, I haven't written a book like that, but I love that kind of book. That is awesome, Inger. Do you have your book so we can see your beautiful?
Yeah, I was like thinking, like it's in here.
It's a wonderful book, you guys. If you are wanting to,
oh, here it is. Here it is.
If you love style and you want to become more conscious and creative, it's a wonderful book. And Inger is hilarious.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
How do I look? The air stopped shopping. So of course, like when you read through it, you don't know that, oh, this is the water pollution chapter. But that's kind of like, you know, just was a way to stop myself from repeating and boring myself to death. But I also think another thing, once you start to write, like Stephen King's advice, like read, like you said, like read, but read authors that you like, because sometimes I found that I would be reading something else and it just like, and it kind of like took up the brain power that I was supposed to use for writing into like something else. So I had to make sure that I kind of like, almost like, I guess, when movie stars stay in character, you know, for the role. So I was like, made sure that I read books that were complementary to what I wanted to write, so I wouldn't get way off onto a whole different thing. So just to keep me like centered and on track. And it was just so helpful. It's like, oh, that's how you can do it. You can do mini headings. You can do da, da, da. You can, oh, you don't have to have a quote in the beginning. How did, blah, blah. You know, it's just so helpful to read a lot. But also, of course, I wish I had a lot of other authors to, you know, talk to and talk it through with.
Yeah. And I think one of the beauties of, so the group that we're running in January is really, what we're doing there is we're tapping into there's a lot of social research out there that shows that when we move together as a group towards a goal, it is much easier and you're much more likely to be successful than if you do it totally solo. And so we're sort of playing with synchronistic timing, all moving sort of at dawn, riding at dawn, you know, to charge forward into the new year with this intention of writing a book. And then we give you all kinds of supportive practices, and we do many gatherings where we're going to be writing, and there's lots of connecting. So you're going to get to know other people who are doing the same thing you're doing with their books. And here's what's really important, what we will not be doing. We will not be reading each other's books. We are not there to, this is not a critical writers group, or a lot of people are familiar with these groups where you get together and you read each other's material out loud and then give feedback. There is none of that. Now, that can be an important part when you're polishing your book, is to get some what we usually call beta readers. So like my mom was always my first beta reader. I think Liz Gilbert is one of her sisters is like, I mean, everybody has somebody who's going to be a first reader, and then you may want to share it with even more people to get feedback. Like, what grabbed you? What was the best part of this? Or what do you want more to know more about? But we will not be doing that in this course. You will be solely focused on your project.
I think that's really important, because it's like, maybe now I'm much more open to like, hey, have a look at these chapters, and it doesn't feel so fragile and vulnerable. But especially when I was starting out, the idea that someone else would have eyes on it when I wasn't even sure and I didn't really have the structure. And like, I think that one-off comment, even if it wasn't mean, even if it like just like, it could have really have stopped me from like, I don't want to do this. This is too scary. It's scary enough for yourself, and then to deal with the like feedback that comes in too early. So I think this is like, I'm so glad we're not doing that, because I feel the important thing is just get it done. Get it done. And then that the momentum and the confidence and the clarity and just the whole, like, you feel a little bit better about, you're like, well, I finished the whole, you know, draft, even if it's a shitty draft. Now we can start to share it with people. But like, it's almost like taking a cake out of the oven before it's baked. And like, what do you think? You know, it's like, well, not really the time yet.
Yeah. And we recommend in the course that people really, if you do want to start sharing it, you share it with somebody who you really feel safe with, and you really feel, because this is tender bits of yourself that you're sharing. And as Ingrid said, even the slightest hint of anything can, until you sort of get more, I think the best kind of criticism is the kind of criticism that makes you go, that's what's wrong with it. Like, yes, there was this area in the book that I was like, oh, I hate rereading that part. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to say something, but something's not right. And then the person says, oh, you know what I love here is I need more da da da, whatever it is. So the kind of feedback that's really useful is the kind that gets you excited to go back, to polish it, to make it better. And you just get pumped because you're realizing that was what the problem, that's what was
exactly missing. So it's not like, well, this sucked, you know, don't know why you're a writer, you know, but like, I remember very clearly, because I had this like, so it wasn't a writing group, but don't get the illusion that it was all by myself, because I'm lucky enough to have several people in my life who are writers. So I would send off, I made a pact with like one of my friends, and every time a chapter was done, I would send it to her, and she would read through it, and she would just, and then for one of them, she's like, oh, I'm learning a lot more about Lady Di than I feel is necessary. Because because I was just like, wanted every single detail about, it was like a chapter on fashion icons, right? So it was just like, she's like, maybe a little bit. And then she would give some suggestions and she would have ideas. And so it's not just like, well, that sucked, but like suggestions for improvement from a person I loved and trust and who also got my writing. I think that was super important. And then like you said, then I got kind of pumped. It's like, yeah, I had a feeling that something was off with this chapter, but being so close to it myself, I couldn't really put my finger on it.
And it's really important ultimately to honor ourselves.
Yes.
So I'll just tell a little brief story about, so when the draft for Swimming with Elephants, this I actually published in a traditional manner with a publishing company. So when I handed in the final draft of the polished manuscript, immediately they sent it to someone who did all the corrections, and then they sent the corrected document back to me, and I was like reading through it, and I couldn't see what the corrections were for some reason, that like all the stuff was suppressed. But all of a sudden I was like, where did all the swear words go? I could have sworn there was a F-bomb in this one. Like in fact, it's not there, and it's so glaringly obvious, and it's what is good. And then I went back and I realized they had removed every single swear word. And I got this note from the publishing company saying that, it's just part of their rules that if it's unnecessary swearing, they had some world, like if it's gratuitous or something like that. And I was like, it's not gratuitous. And I was like, have you read any memoirs recently? Like most people, it's not like the 1950s where we're trying to be polite. It's just sort of like, if it requires an F-bomb, you're going to have it in there. Thankfully, the person who was my agent, I called her and she was like, do you need these, Sarah? Do you need these swear words in here? And I was like, absolutely, I do. I think I might have removed two. I was like, okay, this one is a little gratuitous. But she backed me up. She's like, then you just tell them this is what I want, because we have to honor, no matter what anybody says, if it's not authentic to you, you don't want to make that change, because that's ultimately that's staying in integrity with ourselves, right? Whether it becomes a best-selling thing or whether it flops or whether people are offended by it or whatever. So I just wanted to share that, that even when you have these experts, I mean, I had these people up on a pedestal. I'm like, they know how to write books, and, but I had to go with myself, trust myself there. And there were other areas of that book that they wanted me to delete. And I'm like, but we can't delete that. That's like the whole story.
I know. I think that is so important, because you kind of know, like you said, like you get like pumped with the feedback because like, yes, now I know how to correct it. And then when you're new and there are these like experts, it can be so easy to like fall for that. Oh, well, they know best. I guess I should change it. Like I had a few like proofreaders who came back, well, that joke was a bit too on that. And this, I'm not really sure if you need to say this harshly or what about, and I'm like, nope. This is staying in. This is like my personality. If you sat in front of me, this is how I would talk. It's a memoir. It's not a dissertation, or memoir-ish, right? So it's like, it would be weird to try to like be a politically correct version of myself. Obviously, I don't want to be the word, but you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
when it like, oh, so you didn't get the joke. Not everyone gets the joke in live, the live version of me either. So I'm like, I'm keeping it.
Thank goodness, because we don't want the sanitized version of Inger Kenobi. We want your pure self. I mean, that's what I find is what's interesting. So I guess all that to say, we will not be critiquing your work. And when you do go looking for that critique, like do it with people who you, again, trust and really admire their opinion, and that that they love you and will be gentle with you and loving and honest.
And honest, and also be like, okay, fine, I get it. You can keep that in, but not like, this tug of war, this war of wills, because it's like, it is your book, it's your work. And, but another thing though, that I'm crazy excited about when it comes to this program, which is people who participate and ourselves, we can never feel like we're behind. I know it's so easy when you sign up for a course or a program or do something like, you didn't catch up on all the videos, you didn't do all the work, but you didn't do the homework, and now you feel left behind, and then it's so hard to catch up. And here, all we're doing is writing. Yes, there will be classes. Yes, we have some like bonus material, but it's not like this like relentless onslaught of material to get through every week. Hardly any, just to get you going, some writing prompts, something to get you going on your own journey, which is exactly what I would have needed you know, on my first book, I wouldn't have needed like the history of writing, you know, or anything like that. I just would have needed how to set up a good writing routine. Let's go, you know?
And I think what we heard from people was that people felt incredibly safe, which made us
Yes.
so happy because we spent a lot of time designing the course so that it would feel that way. And people felt incredibly supported. And so they were productive, you know, because when we feel supported, loved, safe, all these things connected to each other, then all there is to do is to write. I mean, and that's such a personal journey, but that's why we put this course together, and we're so excited. And we have 2 people. The first book from last year's program, actually somebody's published just now. Super exciting. Hers is a work of nonfiction, a self-help book. And there are other people working on fictions. One person worked on her album last year. So she worked on writing songs, recording them, and polishing them. And we got to hear several of the very polished versions, and they're just incredible. So whatever project it is, maybe even it's not writing, but if you sense that you could, you know, use a supportive, loving container of empowered writers moving forward, creatives, for this 5-month period, check out, you know, we're going to put the link in the comments, or, you know, in this video, so that you can look into it. And if you have questions about it, but we begin January 10th, and we're super excited. And there's a free class if you're interested. We'll link that below too, that you can take if you kind of want a taste of what the flavor of this course is going to be like. We did a fun, was it 90-minute course last year, called Why You Should Write Your Book, and, you know, in the new year. So we got a lot of positive feedback from that. So if you'd like to take that, that would be awesome. And anything else you want to share, Inger?
Well, I just want to say that what is really exciting
I
is
think
that
you just froze, or maybe I just froze. Shoot.
Oh, am I back? Are we
You're
back
back
here? We're back.
Sorry,
Okay, good. little coffee break. No, I was just going to say that what is really interesting is that when you like start a journey like that, and you like sign up, and there's a starting date, it's like a real like clear line in the sand, like now I'm doing it, and the momentum and the confidence and the fired upness that comes from like, yes, I'm saying yes to this thing, that alone will like propel you forward. Like when I did, like I actually did that for myself when I started, even if I wasn't in a group. It's like, today is the day, I'm starting today. Just like having that, you know, date in the calendar, where like going from I'm thinking about writing a book to like I am working on my book, this is the year. It's like something happens, and you don't know what that is until you've done it, and it's just like truly magical.
It really is. Like together we can do things that we could never do alone. There's something so powerful about that. So
Yeah.
we hope you join us. Check out the links, and thanks for watching, everybody. And yeah, we will see you next time.